Hey, everyone, and welcome to your favorite cybersecurity podcast. It's our favorite cybersecurity podcast as well, not another demo. And we are your favorite podcast because why? Well, because we promise you no marketing jargon, no PowerPoint slides, and no acronyms, or at least we'll explain them if we use them. I'm your host, Matt, the Trendsetter Nelson. I have with me the one and only Mr. Aaron Brigg and the icon, Anthony Coggins. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Matt, it's 2025. It's a new year. It's a new season of the show. Are you going to continue to do these like utterly ridiculous intros like always? Do you think we find these entertaining? Do you think we find them funny? To which I reply, well, yeah, I, I thought you did. I thought you liked them. You don't like any of these. I put a lot of work into these things. Guys, I'm going to have to reevaluate this entire show now. Nah, we're going to start off 2025 in a big way, talking about a big topic. And so with that, we have with us Chris Hosley from BigID, and we are going to be talking all about data security. So, Chris, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and then explain to the audience a little bit, because I feel like you and I have been talking about this for like 20 years now, and I think finally people are listening. So what has happened that has caused data security to be such a hot topic this year?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. So Chris Osley, AVP for Solution Engineering for BigID, basically everything from the Ohio Valley to the Pacific Ocean. I've got the entire SE organization underneath my belt at this point in time. I've been in data security for a decade now. I've been with BigID for 3 of those 10 years, sorry there. And it's always been data security for me. It's just been top of mind that entire time. As Matt alluded to, it feels like we've been talking about it together for almost that entire
A
time.
while.
And I think this year, the thing that's changing, the thing that's actually coming to light, and I would say probably within the last 6 to 9 months, it's really come to light, is there's a lot more that people are understanding that, hey, they've got their perimeter locked down, they've got the basics in place, but man, that data it's growing at such an exponential rate. We've all been hearing it from Verizon and everybody else for years that it's growing at an exponential rate. Well, now we're talking petabytes and exabytes of data that's sitting out there. It's all over the place. It's being replicated into multiple locations. More people are collaborating with it. And then on top of that, we now have regulations that are just coming down and they're going to smash people in the face. Things like PCI 4.0, CCPA is coming to light. Virginia's got their own. There's 8 different states that are also putting in privacy laws with relation to data itself. So it's not just this idea of we need to get data security under control. It's saying there's actually a financial pain point if we don't. And that's probably why we're having this conversation way more now than we probably ever did in the last decade.
So I guess to that point, and maybe we'll also throw like the acronym that everybody loves or loves to hate right now is AI, artificial intelligence, large language models, more companies that are leveraging those. I guess talk a little bit about like what is the impact of, maybe even, no, let's start there. What have you seen has been like the initial impact of the advent of all of these AI models and programs in data security?
Yeah, so you went there. Like that's what I was trying to avoid with
I
all of my
know, I
being because
know.
we
And
all
I
have been
went
like
right
hearing
acronymed,
AI,
went right into it.
AI.
Yeah.
No, it's perfect though, because that's actually something that sits top of mind as well for everybody. It's just one of those things that there's now with these regulation boards that organizations are standing up, everybody's working with that. The biggest thing I'll say, right, with AI is the idea that you're taking a lot of data, mostly unstructured information that really has no controls built around it. And all of a sudden, you're just basically sending it off to these magical lands to be dropped into data sets to be produced and utilized to create models and then reprocessed and then recalibrated with reprocessed data. And the information just continues to proliferate. And the conversation that we are always having right now is where is that data? Where did it come from? How did it actually get there? Should we have put protections around it before it made its way out the door? What do we do about it now that it is out the door in some random open concept system? And then ultimately, is it making its way back into someone else's hands that are not really supposed to be working with that kind of information? Is it related to regulated data? Is it just general information about our business that's super important? All of those questions are basically sitting there of, can we get ahead of it? What if we do if we're behind it? How do we stop it from making it even worse? And then at the end of the day, like I said, is what do we do? Like, what are we supposed to do if we could stop it now? What do we do to proceed forward in the right way?
Yeah, I think to me, one of the other problems is, I was just having a conversation with a group of people last week at a presentation, and I asked like, how many people work for a company that's been around more than 20 years? And most everybody raised their hand. And then how many or how many organizations have been creating data for more than 20 years before security, before we even thought about these things. So I think there's a lot of over permissioning and just like historical garbage that we're dragging along with that we're dragging along as well, that probably it leaves a huge hole, I would imagine, for most organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that. Like, I mean, again, my time in data security has been for a decade. For 7 of those years, it was really trying to get that problem under wraps, and success rate was really kind of contingent upon the customer of how that actually handled. But since then, right, that data has gone from, hey, we're talking maybe up to a petabyte of information to now going, like I said, now there's a petabyte of data literally just walking out the door in most situations every single day for an organization. So, like you said, who's got access to it? Should they have that access to it? How much did they generate 5, 6, 7 years ago? And is it actually even valid information anymore? It's kind of a big deal for a lot of people.
How are you solving that problem though?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way that we work with it is we're automatically discovering data everywhere, right? That's actually the biggest thing, especially in the cloud repositories. So you can go out and automatically discover data pretty much in all of the majors that are available to you, right? Azure, AWS, GCP. I know we're not trying to use acronyms, so basically Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, right, where you're keeping your data. We want to make sure that we're looking at that information, whether it's in structured or unstructured data. So basically just open file format or inside of tables. Once you have that, we automatically classify it based upon a regulation or a need of an organization. So whatever is most important to someone, is it PII information, so personally identifiable information, or is it regulated information for financial services or healthcare? We want to make sure we cover all of that. Because once you have that, that's where you can start to lock that data down and make sure that you understand what it looks like. Now, the thing that does make us different is that we can also go into the AI repositories that are the most common. So things like OpenAI, Azure's version of OpenAI, you can go into Atlas vector databases, whatever it is that you're looking at. Hugging Face is probably the most popular one, by the way, just because it's just open format. We can go out there and scan that information and see what it looks like and then classify that data too. And then the thing that really does jive for a lot of people is that you can see that it's sitting off in maybe your AWS system, and then it's also sitting off in Hugging Face, and we can tell you where it's been duplicated. So now you understand this is how data made its way from one place to the next.
So so is it more visibility than controls, right? So I'll use the unintended shadow AI use case, right? So this is a situation where you may have a lower level leader that is purchasing an application for their team to help them now, not realizing that there are AI components to it, especially right in, historically right now, or not historically, more recently. I used the wrong word. See, Matt, now you got me messed up. Natural language processing, right?
Sure.
So huge importance in the healthcare system right now. So you have a situation to where you could have a lower level manager, purchasing something for his team to help them be better, not realizing that they're like AI components. What can you do to help kind of like with that both, you know, not intended shadow AI and the more intended shadow AI?
Sure. So from a shadow AI perspective, a lot of times if something's already been enacted, it leaves behind artifacts, things like PIML files, H5 files, things like along those lines that are used to help build up the data sets and the models. You can automatically discover those in the repositories where they've been left behind as kind of that anchor or that hook that information is going to be populated into. We do that, right? So it doesn't matter where the data sits, we'll tell you that, what that looks like. basically, I think there's like 27 artifacts that we'll actually just automatically go out and discover to say, well, congratulations, it's too late, right? This is where data got hooked right into this share, this bucket, this inventory of information. You you're already too late. Congratulations. Like, not that you wanted affirmation that you're already behind the eight ball, but congratulations. Anyone listening to this, you're probably already behind the eight ball. But that conversation is that you then find out that there is shadow AI, and obviously those artifacts are aligned to specific models and specific offerings from various organizations, whether that's Gemini, like I said, Hugging Face, OpenAI. They all leave behind something for that one, so you can identify where that's coming to.
Can you
On top
then,
of that,
after it's identified, if I remember right, you said you could do tagging at
mhm,
that point, right? Because in those situations, it may not be PHI or PII being discussed, but you, after, looking closer, you may deem that like business confidential, right?
yeah,
So there would be value, even if it's not critical data like a PHI, there would definitely still be value in tagging something, business confidential, stuff like that. So you're saying you have the ability to do that?
yeah. Yeah, so we'll actually put a standard tag on it that can actually be then integrated into something like a classic catalog, like a Calibra, Elation, Atlan, Purview. You can also actually inject labels if the system supports it for something like an MIP. So you can take our classification and then apply an MIP label to it from Microsoft to make sure that that stays with that file indefinitely. So you can see that something is sitting out there so that like a copilot can't actually pull it into its models going forward as well. So both of those exist right now. And then within the system, we also do have things like remediation and just general movement of data. We can actually help you with all of that in the event that you do find out that some systems are just being treated in a data stream.
See, that would be helpful because a lot of people don't realize, and this is Microsoft branding. Microsoft, if you ever listen, please rework your branding. But you have like, M365 Copilot, right? So you can purchase the enterprise version of that, as you know, and then segregate,
Mhm.
your data in your own LLMs. But you have situations where you may have like GitHub Copilot, right? Where
Yep.
that's a little bit different. That is still sending data related to coding out to the broader, to your point, the bigger model, because that's where you're going to get most bang for the buck and then bring that in. So obviously you need to be mindful of the data that you're even putting in the editor, right? Like you don't, because a lot of people don't know, just bringing it in there behind the scenes, some of that data is being sent out, whether you ask it for new code or not. So
Correct.
having that kind of tagging even before something happens, it would be nice to be able to configure either alerting or rules around that. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and the coding piece is actually one of the probably the faster growing pieces for us. GitHub, GitLab, Confluence, Jira, Bitbucket. It doesn't matter which one you're using. You can actually use, goodness, this is going to sound strange. You can actually use natural language processing to identify your source code out there, and then we'll actually train against it to find your source code when it's sitting inside of those source areas, any of those repositories I just talked about, and then identify when that is making its way into different areas as well. So you'll see where those snippets exist so that you can then move accordingly and act on what you need to make sure that it doesn't continue to make its way to where it doesn't need to go.
So a couple of the things that I think have caused maybe some of the consternation of companies trying to like do data security is what exactly does it mean? It's an acronym rich space, right? Like now we've got DSPM, data security posture management, but we've had DLP, data loss prevention, and CASB, cloud access security broker. Like we've had all of these different spaces over the years. And so talk a little bit about like where BigID sits in the ecosystem. Like, okay, I'm sitting down. I want to do a data security program at my organization. I'm going to leverage BigID as the platform. What are some of the other things that I still need to look at? What are the areas that you guys play in? I guess talk about the bigger picture of like what does data security actually look like inside an organization?
Yeah. Yeah. So we actually take a really consultative approach. I would say it's one of those that probably aligns really well with most of our partner organizations in the sense that it's consultative in the sense that we want to know where you've already invested. We want to know what you've thought about and what your projects actually align to. So DLP, data loss prevention, is definitely top of mind. if you have something like a SIM or a SOAR solution for orchestration of actions, we also want to know about that. Have you invested in anything around the space of maybe your overall CMDB? Maybe it's actually endpoint that you're worrying about. Is it a CASB solution that you're thinking about, right? Dropping all of the classics that are sitting out there. I think I probably could have said DSP, FIM. I mean, how many other things can we confuse everybody with?
Yeah, we might
But
need a dictionary to
right,
explain
let's
all of
start
these at the end of
breaking
this.
it out. Maybe we'll do a whole second section about all of the acronyms and just start rifling them off. But the concept would be that we want to know what's sitting out there because as an open API platform, we believe that we should be sitting squarely as a foundational point to help you make better business decisions. Because when we're discovering information, we want to do it as efficiently as possible. So we'll tie to something like a CMDB, let's say from ServiceNow, because usually they're incomplete. So how can we help enhance that and pull that information in? Because you might already know some of this. And then at the tail end of after we do our discovery and classification, that information needs to go off to someone with a priority associated with it. The way BigID functions is that we also want to be the ones that can sit in the middle. And if you need to take an immediate action, we've got you covered, right? We can help you react to the things that are happening right now. We also have an ability then, though, to get into a more of a proactive approach, get that information into the hands of the business and allow you to start working with where you've already made investments. Our goal isn't to come in and help you to rip out a bunch of products, but our goal is definitely to come in and say, how can I help make better business decisions? Because everything does come back to business, not just security, not just privacy or governance. It's the business. How can we help you, right? Make this. If I can tell you there's 50,000 files that contain PCI information sitting wide open inside of a Microsoft SMB drive, what are you going to do about that? Well, maybe you've got a plan in place, but you don't have a way to get that off for somebody to make a decision. We'll help you with that. Things along those lines is where we stand. So we do consider ourselves kind of that point that says automatically discover, automatically classify, automatically prioritize, and get it to the hands of the people that need to make that decision for you.
You mentioned remediation there a little bit. Are there
Mhm.
aspects of the platform that can assist? Because I do see a lot of solutions out there that will tell you that you've got 5 million problems, but they won't help you solve any of them. So are there things inside the platform to like, you go, okay, I've got all this PCI data here that's wide open to the world. Now what?
Yeah, you can automatically pick up and move that data within the remediation application. So if you say, look, all this data is sitting out here, let's pick it up and move it. But in the case of like your example, I would say we'd want to help revoke that access. So we can help you do that as well. So you can come in and revoke things like open access, so things like to the old school everyone group. That's always a fun one. Or external links. So why somebody shared something, we can help you kill those links as well. So you can see what that actually looks like and act on that. So they get that classic 404 message when they click on that link moving forward because the data shouldn't be shared. It's all then automated inside of our systems because the entire system is, like I said, is built on APIs. It has webhooks for all of those actions, and most of those systems actually already support it. On top of that, though, if you're integrating with something like the classic brand new things like Databricks Unity Catalog or Snowflake, which, let's be honest, I think everyone's probably getting into that space as some of the fastest growing companies in the world, we actually tie directly into their security as well. So you can mask data, you can redact the data, you can apply access controls to that data as well, right inside of those systems at a very granular level on the entire front. Both of those platforms are supported. There's a couple more coming as well.
Does that help with some of the PCI 4.0 compliance things, right? Because, you know, version 3 kind of sucked in regards to do encryption, right? Some of the stuff was basic. Okay, we can do encryption at a lot of different levels. How do we organize the data or tag the data to then make sure it's appropriately, has the appropriate encryption level, not to mention stuff around the new controls around, configuring, your website to treat the data differently, whether it's through scripting and stuff like that. What are some of the things that your company can help with in regards to that?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we get incredibly granular because, like you said, 3.0 was such a pain. Sorry, it was enjoyable, right? I think for a lot of people because they just said encrypt it. And you just said Click, great. And then everybody went, why is it running so slow? Yeah, congratulations. 4.0 definitely does require a little bit more surgical in nature. And same thing with actually with HIPAA too, right? It needs to be more surgical. You can't just say it's all HIPAA data either. So the concepts there are right, is that we get down to the actual object level, right? So if you want to do something at a very prescriptive level in your unstructured data about each file, we'll help you. We can help you either individually as ourselves to walk you through about what your options actually are, like picking up and moving the data or applying access controls. But we can also then tie it into a partner like a Talus, for example, that can help you actually do prescriptive level encryption on those areas, or MIP using their, I think it's RIM now as their technology for this, where we can actually help you to encrypt that way as well. Again, because we're doing it at such a granular level, you now actually have that surgical approach for things like PCI and HIPAA, where you don't get to broadly encrypt entire disks anymore. You actually have to be very deliberate in what's actually happening on those fronts.
I'm
Anthony.
seeing more and more now where I'm seeing like chief data officers coming into some of the security meetings. So I feel like the business is getting a lot more involved on the data side of things, right? So we have like, what is our data worth? Sometimes versus how do we secure our data? So anything in that regard, or what are you seeing like as an industry where we're seeing companies, and maybe some of this links into some of the AI stuff, right? Like, how do we not only secure the data that we have, but is there ways to get the value out of it or monetize it, and then but still be able to protect it while we're doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. CDOs definitely are showing up a lot in a lot of conversations. Um, it helps obviously having a governance play for what we work with data, how we work with data, because we do have a registry or a catalog of information. So you can now start building out better practices for this. Now, I have a couple of people on my team who are originals from Calibra, and they're like, we're not a catalog. Calibra is a catalog, which is fine. I'm not going to get into that debate here because the granularity of this is just next level. But the concept would be, right, is that I think AI is the thing is that is driving those conversations, because we have to know what the data looks like, what's the business purpose for that data, and what are we doing to proactively work on it as it continues to come into our environment. How do we keep it under control, under wraps, and only align to the areas of the business that actually need it? And then ultimately apply things like data lifecycle management and otherwise to it, right? Which is definitely, I would say, I have to give you a trend. The last 18 months, every one of our customers is coming to us and asking us about retention schedules, remediation applications, and most importantly, how to automate both of them together. And that's where we step in on that front. So stepping in a lot, CDOs, a little had a debate this morning with my whole team about this. What's the value of a record? I'm like, it's $168 right now. When I started this, it was like $397, but it follows basic economic principles, right? Supply and demand. Congratulations, with every breach, that record value goes down just a little bit more, because let's face it, your information is just out there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Anthony to chime in, especially since you're going to be doing a talk on it. Are the questionnaires have been, and cyber insurance questionnaires have been evolving a lot in the last 2 years. I guess, Anthony, related to some of this data tagging, are you seeing some of those questions, like this granular level questions being asked in some of these questionnaires now?
Not yet, but as we continue to increase our data privacy laws, I expect, the insurance companies to follow in short order. Um, and as regulations push, our insurance questionnaires usually catch up a year later or so. So, they're asking about PAM, now when we have regulations that required PAM, 2 years ago. So I would say it's, just a matter of time. My question though, Chris, is how architecturally does BigID work? What permissions do you need? How do we get you into the system? And then how long, is this cataloging take and, classification take, and then how often are you updating? What's that schedule look like? To kind of tell me about implementation and actually scanning the data.
Yeah. Just install us, hit start. We'll call you when it's done. No, absolutely not how that actually goes. So BigID has some pretty big core principles, right? Number one is we never copy your data. Like we believe security wise that just violates everything as security professionals. So don't copy your data in any way. The way that we don't copy data is actually use something, piece of technology, gets as close to the data as possible. Basically, it sits off in your cloud ecosystem, your data centers. It's a containerized architecture designed to hyperscale, so you can actually scan the data. You do it in flight, it uses a read-only service account. That read-only service account can tie directly into your favorite PAM that's sitting out there, whether that's CyberArk, HashiCorp, Beyond Trust, Delinea, whatever you want to say. And the whole communication is actually controlled by you. So therefore, we're never making a copy of your data, and the data stays exactly where it resides right now. So service accounts are being used. It reads it simply, looks at that information, and the only information that comes back to BigID is actually just metadata that was discovered. So basically, did I find a name? Did I find an SSN? What is actually there, but never pulling it all back to us? We believe in that because number one, PCI doesn't allow for that to be the case. It has to be 100% client controlled if you're PCI regulated and 100% certified. Or 100% certified. On top of that, we want to make sure that when we're looking at all this, everything is RBAC controlled. So always 100% RBAC controlled. Every single click, option, drop down, whatever it is, as a full tie-in, you can tie directly into your favorite SAML and SSO to do that. So you don't have to recreate the wheel with all your users and groups. Keep it clean and easy on that front. When we go out and look at data, right, you can automatically, like I said, onboard all of your cloud repositories, your on-prem repositories, whatever it is that you're looking at, whatever is the most important, and do it with a CMDB, do it with our auto discovery tools, or just your classic connect in and look at it with a simple service account and tie in. Use OAuth, whatever you're trying to do. You begin classifying as soon as you're ready. You can set what classifiers you want to look at. So basically, what regulations are you tied to? Is there a series of business information points you want to see? And the system is stateful. So literally on the first call, you actually start seeing the results coming back. You scan data, and the information starts showing up in our catalog in a matter of seconds. So we can scan huge amounts of data in incredibly short periods of time. The old school days, it was install one day, check it the next day to make sure that everything was coming together, then kick off a scan, wait a week, look for it. For us, everything shows up day one. In fact, we want to talk as much as you want to talk whenever you come see your data, whenever you see something that's interesting. We automatically put tags on that you're interested in, since related to sensitivity or to a regulation. We automatically prioritize the risks. So if we find a bunch of open information out in the wild, we automatically get a category. Matt said the word DSPM. I'm going to say it again, data security posture management. It's just a part of our core. It's for us. We think every vendor should be able to do that automatically, not have it be the only thing that they do though. And then as we work through that, it's always being up to date because we do something called an operational scan methodology, right? So we can actually tell you, should you even spend time on a data source? We call it an assessment scan. We can then do a sampling to see how big that'll actually come back. And then ultimately, if you choose to, you can do full scans, or if you do a full scan and you just want to pull in all the deltas, just do a differential scan. The whole concept, though, is that we need to operationally work with every one of our customers. Some of them right now are managing between 50 and 90 petabytes of data. But right now we're getting into these conversations where we're talking about exabytes of data for some of these organizations. They've got billions of objects sitting inside of our catalog.
Yeah.
That would be one of the values of the doing reports on the meta tagging, right? So your company doesn't have to view that confidential data to be able to give valuable reports from. Then using the meta tagging in the reports, then on my side, I can go in and do the appropriate auditing, and I don't have to worry about, that gray area. So I do like it. Are you seeing more companies ask for that level? Because it seemed to me that would be more a maturity thing than an implementation. Are you guys being, do you evaluate where the company's at to begin with and then kind of tailor your initial approaches appropriately?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're PCI regulated, though, it automatically gets put into place. There's just no exception with my team. So if they're like, nope, we're PCI, I'm like, great. All controls 100% in full lockdown mode for our most lockdown financial services organizations. The top two processors of financial services in the world, we got to make sure that we're dialed in, right? Top investment banks, we have to make sure that they're dialed in. So we have to do that. But yes, it can be dialed up and down based on what's needed or based on the criteria or the people associated with that information. Yeah.
Well,
Those are the questions I had, man.
yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, right? We could probably talk about this forever. In fact, for those of you that are watching, BigID will be one of the sponsors and presenters on the data security panel that we're having on March 20th. So be sure to come and check us out there for our St. Patrick's Bash. Always a good time. Chris, thank you for being a part of this. Like I said, the good ones go fast, and we know we could keep on talking. But fellas, I learned something today. I learned that I have been right for at least 20 years of my life, but it's only recently that anyone has actually started paying attention to me, which reminds me a lot of my children who finally, somewhere in their mid-20s, have realized that maybe dad knew something about something. Anyway, Chris, again, thanks for joining us. Everyone that's watching, please like, subscribe, share, do all of that fun social media stuff, and we'll see you again for the next episode.